My family abandoned me at 17. With a note saying, "You'll figure it out." Now they want back in. Because I'm a millionaire. So I took them to court. When I was 17, my family moved 2 states away without informing me. They left a letter that read, "You'll figure it out." 12 years later, after I'd made it without them, they reached out to reconnect. When I was 17, I returned to a completely vacant house with a note on the kitchen counter. It was the cruelest thing I had ever read. It simply said, "You'll figure it out." I wasn't sure what I had done wrong. I assumed they were tired of pretending they liked me. But the truth was that they had never pretended. When I was 13, I cooked a birthday cake for my mother by myself, only to have her describe it as clumpy. At 15, I taught my brother through his finals, while he called me a know-it-all and slammed the door in my face. At 16, I gave my entire paycheck to my father so he could pay bills, but when I brought it up later, he raged at me because he felt I was useless. I was always useful but not liked. My parents and brother, my only family, had packed up and relocated 2 states away without informing me. I found out from the landlord a week later. They canceled the lease early, so I had a week to move out. I spent 3 nights at a friend's house before running out of places to go. Eventually, I was sleeping in the rear of a storage container that I had rented with my last savings. I snuck into the YMCA and showered, ate peanut butter with a spoon for breakfast, lunch and dinner, used free library computers to apply for employment, and pretended everything was fine. Eventually, I was recruited as a diner server for the night shift. The manager was stern but fair, and he paid me cash beneath the table until I could obtain an ID. She let me take a nap in the break room once when I was practically exhausted. I fought my way through it, purchased a prepaid phone, recorded every single receipt, and watched free YouTube videos on budgeting and goal planning. I barely survived my first year, but I got through it. The turning point came when a regular at the diner gave me a temporary job cleaning office files. It paid 3 times what I made. I said yes. That job led to another, then another. I learned quickly, arrived early, and asked questions. By the age of 22, I was working full-time as a freelancer. By the age of 25, I had started a consultancy firm for myself, using a folding table and a borrowed laptop. By the age of 27, I had 5 contractors under my supervision, my own office, and a customer list that encompassed companies I had never imagined. By the age of 29, I had officially achieved millionaire status. Not an important millionaire, not a fake-it-for-Instagram wealthy, but true savings, a retirement account, no debt, a paid-off apartment, and affordable health insurance. I cried the first time I saw my bank app hit 7 figures. During those difficult years, my family never contacted me once. My brother once appeared in a suggested friends list. He is now married, and still lives in the state where they disappeared. I stared at the computer for a long time, wondering whether he ever informed his wife about me, if he said I fled, or if he said nothing at all. Sometimes I wonder if hating them would have been easier. But truly, it was never hatred. It was heartbreaking. I go to therapy now because I want to remain intact. I've compiled a list of people who saved me when they didn't have to, including co-workers, classmates, and strangers who demonstrated what true support looks like. Last week, a podcast interview I recorded about surviving family estrangement went viral. It surpassed 1 million views in 4 days. My email is full of notes of encouragement, thanks, and strangers telling me I've put voice to their grief. Then one email stood out. The subject line reads, "You're still our daughter." It was from my mother. There was no apology, just a paragraph about listening to my point of view and possibly talking. Then came another message, this time from my brother. "We miss you. Can we fix this?" I stared at the screen for a long time before shutting down the laptop. I sat with it and wondered whether mending entails looking back or forward. I didn't answer immediately. I needed time to process. My therapist, Melissa, suggested that I wait at least a week before making any decisions. "Give yourself space to feel whatever comes up," she advised throughout our session. "There's no rush to respond." So, I did. I concentrated on work, went to the gym, and ate dinner with friends. But those emails haunted me. I kept opening them, reading them, and then closing them again. My mother's reply felt cold and professional, as if she were writing to a distant acquaintance. My brother's was shorter but seemed more genuine. I could not quit thinking about them. After 10 days, I decided to respond to my brother first. Just something simple. I wrote to myself, "It's been 12 years. What changed?" Then I pressed submit before I could overthink it. He responded within an hour. He claimed the podcast made him comprehend what they had done. He claimed he was only 15 when they abandoned me, that he had no option, that he had always wondered about me, and that he had looked me up online a few times over the years but never had the confidence to contact me. He was happy to see me achieve it. I didn't buy it totally. If he was so concerned, why wait until I had achieved public success? I asked him just that. His subsequent email was longer. He revealed that money was tight for them, my parents' business had failed, his wife was expecting their second kid, and medical bills were piling up. I felt my stomach drop. That was the actual cause. I did not reply for another week. Then my mother sent a follow-up email with old family photos attached, including pictures of me as a newborn, us at the beach when I was about 5 or 6, and Daniel and I creating a snowman. Happy times that seemed to belong in someone else's life. She stated at the bottom of the email, "We made mistakes. We want to make amends." I shared Melissa's emails during our next session. She reminded me that I had control, that I could set limits, and that I owed them nothing. However, she said that closure, whether in the form of reconciliation or a final goodbye, would help me move forward. I nodded, but within I was conflicted. Part of me wanted to tell them to go to hell. Another part wanted to know why they abandoned me, and a tiny dumb part of me still wished they would love me. I planned to meet my brother first, with no parents. We planned to meet at a coffee shop in Chicago, about halfway between our homes. I flew in the morning, booked into a hotel, and attempted to relax. I almost canceled 3 times, but at 2 p.m., I strolled into the coffee shop and noticed him right away. He appeared older and heavier, with a receding hairline, but his eyes remained the same. When he spotted me, he stood up awkwardly and unsure. I did not hug him. We just sat across from each other, holding our coffees like strangers. The first 20 minutes were spent making awkward small conversations about the weather, my travel, and his drive. Then he began apologizing. "Ava, I'm sorry," Daniel whispered, his voice cracking. "I was just a kid when it happened. I didn't know they were planning to leave you behind until it was too late. I was too scared to stand up to them." I simply listened, scanning his face for clues of dishonesty. He was earnest, but I had been duped before. I asked him the question that had been bothering me for 12 years. Why me? Why was I left behind? He looked down at his coffee. "They always saw you as the strong one. The independent one. The one who would be fine on your own. They thought you didn't need them as much as I did. They convinced themselves you'd be better off without them." That was the most ludicrous thing I had ever heard. I told him about the storage unit. Weeks of eating peanut butter, showering at the YMCA, and working night shifts at the age of 17. His face crumbled. "I didn't know," he muttered. "They told me you had a plan. That you wanted to stay behind. That you were going to live with a friend's family. That you'd chosen to separate from us." All falsehoods. By the end of our meeting, I didn't know what to think. He appeared truly sorry. He showed me images of his wife and children, explained his position as an accountant, and inquired about my business. He did not outright beg for money, which shocked me. He hugged me as we separated. I allowed him to hug me, but I did not reciprocate. I just stood there, arms by my sides, feeling nothing. Back at the hotel, I called Melissa and told her everything. She pointed out that while my brother appeared sorry, he was still portraying himself as a victim rather than admitting his role in my abandonment. She was correct. He was 15, not 5, old enough to pick up the phone, send an email, and check in on me after 12 years. That night, my mother called. I hadn't given her my phone number, so Daniel must have. I almost did not respond, but curiosity won out. Her voice sounded older and raspier. When I said hello, she burst into tears and began telling me how proud she was of me, how she had always known I would succeed, and how special I was. I allowed her to talk herself out. Then I asked her the same question I had asked my brother. Why me? Her response was different. "We were in debt, Ava. We couldn't afford 3 mouths to feed. We knew you were smart enough to make it on your own. We figured you'd go to social services and get placed with a better family. We thought we were doing you a favor." I hung up on her, blocked her number right away, threw my phone across the room, and screamed into a pillow. The next morning, I received an email from my father, our first contact in 12 years. He did not apologize. Instead, he wrote about how difficult their lives had been, about medical bills and failed businesses, about Daniel's wife needing surgery, and about their impending eviction. Finally, he asked if I could help the family. Not a single question about my life. Not a single acknowledgement of what they'd done. I forwarded the email to Melissa with the subject line. And there it is. She called me immediately, despite it being Sunday. We talked for an hour about boundaries, about forgiveness versus reconciliation, about the difference between helping someone and enabling them, about what I actually wanted versus what I thought I should want. By Monday morning, I had made my decision. I emailed my brother, told him I was glad we'd met, that I understood he was in a difficult position when we were younger, that I was willing to have a relationship with him and his family but with clear boundaries. No money, no loans, no financial support of any kind, and no relationship with our parents until they took full responsibility for their actions. His response was immediate and telling. "I'm really disappointed, Ava," he wrote. "Our parents really need help. Families should support each other. You're being selfish with your success." All the guilt buttons they'd installed in me as a child pushed at once. I didn't respond. Instead, I booked an appointment with Melissa and a vacation to Bali. I needed space to process everything. 3 days later, Daniel called. Left a voicemail apologizing for his email. Said he understood my position. Said he still wanted a relationship on my terms. Said he'd respect my boundaries. I listened to it twice, trying to decide if he was sincere or just changing tactics. I decided to give him one more chance, but with my guard up. I went to Bali anyway. Spent 2 weeks on the beach, hiking through rice fields and meditating. I needed the distance. When I got back, I had 6 more emails from my dad, each more desperate than the last. I didn't read past the subject lines. I also had a text from Daniel, asking if we could talk again. I agreed to a phone call, nothing more. The call started okay. He apologized again for pushing. "I've been thinking a lot about what you told me," he said. "I'm in therapy now too." I believed that part. He sounded different and less defensive. We talked about his kids, about my business, normal stuff. Then he mentioned that our parents were coming to visit him next weekend, asked if I would consider meeting them just for an hour, in a public place. I felt my chest tighten. "I'm not ready for that, Daniel." He pushed a little, but backed off when I got quiet. After we hung up, I called Melissa. We had an emergency session that night. She helped me realize I was afraid of seeing them, not because I hated them, but because I still craved their approval. Still wanted them to love me. Still wanted to be enough. It was pathetic, but it was true. I cried. For an hour in her office. The next day, Daniel texted again. Said our mom was crying all night after he told her I wouldn't meet them. Said our dad was talking about driving to my city anyway. I felt panicky. Blocked Daniel's number immediately. Then I called my assistant and told her I was working from home for the week, ordered groceries for delivery and basically hid in my apartment like a scared kid. On Wednesday, the doorman called up. Said there was a couple asking for me, wouldn't give their names. I knew instantly. Told him I wasn't accepting visitors. 5 minutes later, my phone rang from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It was my dad. "Ava, we drove 8 hours to see you," his angry voice said. "You're being childish. We deserve a chance to explain." I deleted the message and turned off my phone. Thursday morning, I woke up to someone pounding on my door. I froze in bed, heart racing, checked the peephole. It was them, my parents, standing in my hallway like they had any right to be there. "Ava, please," my mom's voice came through the door. "We just want to talk to you." "We know you're in there," my dad added. "We love you. We're sorry." I didn't open the door. I sat on the floor with my back against the wall, shaking. Eventually, they left. I called building security immediately, told them not to let those people up again. The guard sounded concerned and asked if I needed police. I said, "No. Just don't let them up." Then I called Melissa. She came over on her lunch break, brought me a sandwich, and sat with me while I cried. Told me I had every right to set boundaries, that I didn't owe them a meeting, that what they were doing was harassment, not reconciliation. After she left, I got an email from Daniel. He was furious. Said I'd humiliated our parents. Said they were staying in a cheap motel they couldn't afford because they were so desperate to see me. Said his wife needed surgery next month and they were hoping I could help. Said I was being cruel. I didn't respond. Friday morning, I decided I needed to leave town for a while. Booked a flight to visit my friend Rachel in Portland. She'd been one of the people who helped me when I was homeless and let me crash on her couch for a week when I had nowhere else to go. I trusted her completely. I was throwing clothes in a suitcase when my phone rang an unknown number again. I ignored it. 10 minutes later, my doorman called. Said there was a woman downstairs having what looked like a medical issue. Said she was asking for me by name. claimed to be my mother. I felt sick. Told him to call an ambulance if she needed help, but I wasn't coming down. He sounded uncomfortable but agreed. I finished packing and headed downstairs an hour later. Checked the lobby carefully before entering. No sign of them. I felt relieved, but also weirdly guilty. The doorman gave me a strange look as I passed. Told me the ambulance had come. That the woman had been having chest pains. That she'd been taken to Memorial Hospital. I nodded and hurried out to my waiting Uber. At the airport, I got another call from Daniel. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mom, had a heart attack," he was crying. "She's in surgery. This is your fault for stressing her out." I hung up on him, called Melissa instead. She answered immediately. I told her what happened. Asked if I was a terrible person. "Ava, listen to me," she said firmly. "You are not responsible for your mother's health. This feels like another manipulation tactic. Get on your plane and take care of yourself." I did. Spent the weekend with Rachel. Told her everything. She remembered when my family abandoned me. Remembered how broken I'd been. She was furious on my behalf. "They don't deserve a minute of your time," she said, pouring me another glass of wine. "Not after what they did to you." It felt good to have someone so firmly in my corner. Sunday night, I got an email from my dad. My mom was stable, had a stent put in, would be released Tuesday. The email ended with, "She's asking for you. Don't you think you've punished us enough?" I showed Rachel. She rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. Told me this was textbook guilt tripping. I knew she was right. But part of me still felt responsible. I flew home Monday. Found flowers outside my apartment door. The card said, "Please call us. We're staying at the Holiday Inn until Wednesday." No apology, no acknowledgement of boundaries. Just another demand. I threw the flowers in the trash chute. Tuesday morning, I got a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of my mom in a hospital bed looking pale and small. The message said, "She might not have much time left. Do you really want to live with this regret?" I blocked the number. Called Melissa. She suggested I take a social media break, change my number, maybe even stay with a friend for a while. I agreed. Called my assistant and told her I'd be working remotely for 2 weeks. Packed another bag. Before I could leave, my doorman called again. Said there was a young woman downstairs asking for me. Said she had a small child with her. Said she claimed to be my sister-in-law. I felt cornered. These people wouldn't stop. I told the doorman to send her up. Decided to face this head on. The woman who knocked on my door looked exhausted. Had dark circles under her eyes. Was holding a sleeping toddler against her shoulder. "I'm Rachel," she said quietly. "Daniel's wife. I came alone because I wanted to talk to you without family drama." I let her in reluctantly. Offer her water. She accepted gratefully. Rachel put her sleeping daughter on my couch, tucking a blanket around her. Then she sat at my kitchen table and started talking. "I only learned about you 3 years ago," she admitted. "Daniel told me you ran away at 17, cut contact with the family. I always thought it was strange but never pushed. Hearing your podcast was a shock. I confronted him, and he finally admitted the truth. I just listened, not sure what to believe anymore." Rachel seemed sincere. "I'm horrified by what they did to you," she continued. "I insisted Daniel reach out, but I had no idea they were going to ask you for money. I'm embarrassed and angry about that. Yes, I do need surgery for a thyroid condition, but we have insurance. Your parents are the ones in financial trouble, not us." I asked her why she'd come. She looked me straight in the eyes. "You deserve to know the whole truth," she said. "Your parents have been telling everyone you abandoned the family, that you were mentally unstable, that you stole money from them before disappearing, that they spent years looking for you, all lies to cover what they'd done." I felt like I'd been punched. "How do you know this is true?" She pulled out her phone, showed me Facebook posts from years back. My mom asking for prayers to find her troubled daughter. My dad claiming I'd taken their savings before running away. Posts about hiring private investigators, about checking homeless shelters, all carefully crafted to make them look like victims, all dated years after they'd abandoned me. Rachel apologized for being part of it, even unknowingly. Said she'd confronted my parents too. That they'd admitted everything to her when she threatened to tell the whole family the truth. That they were desperate now because their lies were unraveling. That my podcast had people asking questions they couldn't answer. Her daughter woke up to a cute little girl with curly hair. "This is Lily," Rachel said softly. She's 3. I have another daughter on the way. I want my children to know their aunt, but only if you want that too. No pressure, no guilt, just an open door if you ever choose to walk through it. After they left, I sat in my apartment for hours, processing. Called Melissa again, told her everything Rachel had said. She wasn't surprised. Abusers often control the narrative, she explained. They create alternate realities where they're the victims. She asked what I wanted to do now. I honestly didn't know. That night I got another email from my dad. This one was different, angry, and threatening. Said if I told lies about them online, they would sue me for defamation. Said they had proof I'd stolen from them. Said they'd go to the media with their side if I didn't take down the podcast and issue a public apology. Said they expected financial compensation for the damage to their reputations. I forwarded it to Melissa, then to my lawyer, Marcus. He called me immediately. This is empty threatening, he assured me. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation. Save everything but don't respond. I'll handle it if they actually file anything, which I doubt they will. People who are actually going to sue don't usually announce it first. The next day I got a call from Daniel. I let it go to voicemail. He sounded panicked. Ava, Rachel told me she visited you. Our parents are furious. They're saying terrible things about her now too. I'm scared they're going to try something desperate. Please call me back on Rachel's phone, not mine. I didn't know what to believe anymore. Called Marcus again. He suggested meeting Daniel and Rachel somewhere public, with him present as my lawyer just to hear them out. I agreed reluctantly. We set up a meeting at a restaurant near Marcus's office for the next day. They showed up on time. Both looked terribly stressed, exhausted. Rachel had a bruise on her arm she kept trying to hide. Daniel couldn't make eye contact. I'm Marcus, Ava's attorney, he said as we sat down, which made Daniel flinch. But we sat down, ordered coffee, and they started talking. The story that came out was worse than I'd imagined. My parents had been living off Daniel for years, moving in and out of his house, taking money for emergencies, watching his kids while criticizing his parenting. When Rachel confronted them about me, my dad had grabbed her arm hard enough to leave marks. Daniel had kicked them out. They were now staying in a motel, calling constantly, showing up at his work. I listened without interrupting, watched my brother break down as he described how our parents had controlled him his entire life. How they'd convinced him I abandoned them. How he'd been too scared to question their version of events. How he'd been trapped in their web of manipulation and lies for 12 years. How he was terrified they would hurt Rachel or the kids. Marcus asked careful questions about financial entanglements, about house titles and bank accounts, about whether my parents had keys to their house. Daniel answered everything. Said they'd co-signed his mortgage. Said his dad was still on his bank account from when he was in college. Said they had spare keys. Said they knew all his passwords. Marcus took notes, occasionally glancing at me. By the end of the meeting I felt drained but clearer. This wasn't just about me anymore. Daniel and Rachel were victims too, in their own way different from me, but still trapped. Marcus suggested they speak to a lawyer of their own, gave them a colleague's card, told them to change their locks, passwords and bank accounts immediately. They nodded, looking overwhelmed but grateful. As we were leaving, Daniel hugged me. This time, I hugged him back. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was something. A recognition that we'd both been damaged by the same people. Maybe we could help each other heal. That night, I got a series of increasingly unhinged texts from my parents' numbers, accusations, threats, guilt trips. I blocked them all. Then I called Rachel and asked if they were safe. She said yes. They'd changed the locks, stayed with friends the night before, were looking into a restraining order. I felt relieved but still worried. The next morning I woke up to my phone ringing. It was Rachel, hysterical. They broke into our house, she sobbed. They took Lily's baby photos, important documents, and Daniel's laptop. They left a note. Family matters should stay in the family. I told her to call the police immediately, said I'd meet them at their house. Called Marcus on my way. When I arrived, there was a police car outside their house. An officer was taking statements in the living room. The place was a mess, drawers pulled out, papers scattered. Daniel was sitting on the couch, head in his hands. Rachel was pointing out missing items to the officer. I introduced myself as family, there to help. The officer seemed skeptical that grandparents would break in. Are you sure they didn't just use a key? He asked. Maybe this is a misunderstanding. Rachel showed him her bruised arm, Told him about the escalating behavior, about the threats, about how they'd been stalking them. He took notes but didn't seem convinced. Said without evidence it would be hard to prove who did this. After the police left, we cleaned up together. Found more missing things, photo albums, financial documents, the spare key to their car. Daniel looked defeated. "This is my fault," he said. "I should have protected my family better. Should have stood up to them years ago. Should have looked for you harder." I didn't disagree, but I didn't pile on either. We were beyond that now. Marcus arrived as we were finishing. Looked around grimly. Said this changed things. That we needed to document everything. That breaking and entering was a serious crime. That we should all stay somewhere else for a few days. That he'd help us file for emergency restraining orders in the morning. We nodded, too exhausted to argue. Rachel packed bags for them while Daniel and I secured the house as best we could, changed locks again, checked windows and discussed security cameras. It felt surreal, taking these precautions against our own parents but also necessary. They'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. As we were leaving, Daniel got a text from our dad. Just 3 words. "We're watching you." He showed it to me, hands shaking. I took a screenshot, sent it to Marcus. Then I made a decision. Told them they were coming to stay with me. My building had security cameras, a doorman who already knew not to let our parents in. They accepted gratefully. That night, the 4 of us ate takeout in my living room. Lily played with toys Rachel had packed. We talked quietly about the next steps, about restraining orders, about police reports, about changing phone numbers and email addresses, about possibly moving to a new house, about how to protect ourselves long term. It wasn't the family reunion I'd ever imagined, sitting there with the brother who'd let me be abandoned, his wife who'd believed lies about me, and their daughter who was innocent in all of this. But somehow it felt right. Like we were finally facing the truth together. Like maybe, just maybe, we could build something new from the ashes of what our parents had destroyed. The next morning, Marcus called. Said he'd filed emergency restraining orders for all of us. Said we needed to appear in court next week to make them permanent. Said he'd also reported the break-in to a detective he knew who was taking it more seriously than the responding officers had. Said we should all stay together until this was resolved. I agreed. Called my assistant, told her I'd be working from home indefinitely because of a family emergency. She understood, rearranged my schedule. I set up a workspace in my guest room for Daniel, who also needed to work remotely. Rachel and Lily took over my living room, building pillow forts and watching cartoons. It was strange having people in my space. I'd lived alone for years, liked my quiet routines, my clean counters, my empty sink. But there was something comforting about the noise too, about Lily's laughter, about Rachel's quiet humming as she folded laundry, about Daniel's typing from the other room. It felt like family. Not the family that had abandoned me, but maybe the family we could become. That afternoon my doorman called up. Said there was a delivery of flowers. I told him to check the card before sending them up. He read it to me. "We know where you all are. This isn't over." I told him to refuse the delivery, and to call the police if the delivery person wouldn't take them back. Then I called Marcus again. He said he'd add this to our case file. That it strengthened our request for restraining orders. That we were doing everything right. I didn't tell Daniel or Rachel about the flowers. They were stressed enough. Instead, I ordered extra groceries, made dinner for everyone, and played with Lily. Tried to create some normalcy in this bizarre situation. But that night, after everyone was asleep, I sat alone in my kitchen and finally let myself feel everything. The fear, the anger, the grief, the strange hope. I cried silently into a dish towel so no one would hear me. In the morning, Rachel found me making coffee. Asked if I was okay. I lied. Yes. She didn't believe me. Sat down at the counter. "It's okay not to be okay, Ava," she said gently. "I'm not either. Daniel cries in the shower where he thinks no one can hear. Lily keeps asking when we can go home. This whole situation is terrible, but I'm grateful we're facing it together." I looked at her. This woman I barely knew, who was somehow now part of my life. Asked her why she'd come to me that first day. Why she'd chosen to believe me over the family she'd known for years. She smiled sadly. "I've always felt something was off about your parents. About the stories they told. About the way they controlled Daniel. The podcast confirmed my suspicions. I couldn't let my daughters grow up thinking abandoning a child was ever acceptable." We hugged them. First time. It felt awkward but genuine. Like the beginning of something. Not friendship exactly, not yet. but understanding, solidarity, a shared determination to break the cycle of mistreatment that had damaged us all. The next few days fell into a routine: working, cooking, playing with Lily, checking in with Marcus, jumping at unexpected noises, flinching when phones rang. Living in a strange limbo of domestic normalcy and underlying tension. We were safe, but not at peace. Together, but still healing. Family, but still learning what that meant. On Friday, Marcus called with news. The detective had found evidence. Security footage from a gas station near Daniel's house showed our parents' car parked there during the time of the break-in. The restraining order hearing was set for Monday. He was confident we'd get approved. We all felt relieved, but still anxious. Still waiting for the next escalation. It came that night. A brick through Daniel's car window in the parking garage. No note this time. No need for one. The message was plain. The building security tape showed a man in a baseball cap, face carefully turned away from cameras. We couldn't verify it was our dad, but we all knew. Filed another police report. Added it to our case file. Tried not to let Lily know how afraid we were. Sunday night we sat together preparing a strategy for court. What to wear, what to say, what proof to bring. How to describe our family history without seeming crazy. How to make the judge realize the pattern of escalation. How to protect ourselves legally and physically. It was bizarre discussing our parents in this manner, like talking about strangers. Dangerous strangers who happened to share our DNA. As we talked, my phone pinged with an email notification from my mom. Subject line: Last opportunity. I almost erased it unread. But something made me open it. It was short. Just one line. If you go to court tomorrow, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. I showed it to Marcus, who'd stayed for dinner. He took a snapshot, added it to our file, and told me not to respond. Said this kind of threat would only strengthen our case. That night, none of us slept well. I kept checking my locks, listening for noises, wondering what my parents may do next. Wondering if we were overreacting. Wondering if we were underreacting. Wondering how my life had come to this point, from abandoned youth to successful businesswoman to hiding in my own apartment from the ones who gave me life. Monday morning arrived with a weird stillness. We dressed carefully, business casual, respectable, and trustworthy. Rachel arranged for a friend to keep Lily. We drove to the courthouse in separate cars, just in case. Met Marcus on the steps outside. He looked confident, suitcase in hand. Told us he'd handled dozens of cases like this. That the proof was good. The judges took threats seriously. That we'd be protected. As we stepped into the courthouse, I recognized my parents, standing near the entryway. Looking older than I remembered. Smaller somehow. My mom saw me first, made a move toward me. My dad grabbed her arm, held her back. They watched us pass. Didn't say. Didn't try to approach. Just started with a mixture of rage and something else. Something that could have been fear. We filed past them into the building, checked in at security. Followed Marcus to the correct courtroom. Sat together on a bench, waiting for our case to be called. I could feel my parents come behind us. Could sense them seated on the opposite side of the room. Could nearly hear their hushed talk. But I didn't turn around. Keep my eyes forward. Focused on breathing. The judge called our case. We stood, marched forward, and took our places. Marcus presented our evidence calmly. The break-in, the threatening texts, the flowers, the brick, the email, the history of desertion and manipulation. The judge listened closely. Asked clarifying questions. Looked at our parents with increasing concern. When it was their turn, my parents approached the bench. No lawyer. Just them. My dad spoke first. Claimed we were exaggerating. That they were only wanting to reconnect with relatives. That they'd never broken any laws. That they loved us and wanted to make amends. That this was all a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. The judge questioned the security footage. The menacing messages. My dad refuted everything. Said it wasn't them on the camera. Said their texts were being misread. Said they were the victims here, not us. My mom nodded along, periodically blotting at her eyes with a tissue. Then the court addressed them directly about abandoning me at 17. My dad hesitated. Started talking about troublesome kids, about difficult decisions, about doing what they thought was best. The judge cut him short and asked again, directly, "Did you leave your small child alone and relocate to another state?" My father looked down and mumbled something about financial trouble. The judge's expression darkened. After hearing from both sides, the judge approved our restraining orders. 3 years. No contact. Please avoid approaching our homes or offices. No messages from third parties. Any infraction would lead to immediate arrest. My parents appeared astonished, as if they couldn't comprehend what was occurring and had never faced consequences before. My mother called my name once, softly, as we exited the courtroom. I kept walking and didn't look back. I felt a weight lift with each step. Not healed. Not yet. However, this is only the beginning. The first tangible border that could not be breached without major consequences. Outside, Marcus shook all of our hands, saying we'd done well, that the orders were strong, that we should phone him right away if there were any infractions, and that he was proud of us for sticking up for ourselves. We thanked him, bewildered but relieved, like natural catastrophe survivors blinking in the sunlight. Daniel hugged me on the courthouse steps, a genuine hug this time. "I'm sorry, Ava," he murmured, his voice breaking. "For not protecting you then. Sorry for not finding you sooner. For trusting their lies. For reintroducing this chaos into your life." I hugged him back, telling him we'd be fine, that we had each other now, and that we could create something new and better. As we headed to our cars, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost did not check it. However, when I did, I felt a chill. It was a photograph of Lily at her friend's house, playing in the backyard, unaware that she was being observed. Below it, only 4 words. "This is not over yet." I quickly showed Daniel the text. His face turned white. He contacted Rachel, who was already on her way to pick up Lily, and I ordered them to meet us at my apartment. Then I contacted Marcus from the car, my hands trembling so much that I couldn't hold the phone. He urged me to forward him the text and drive straight home, that he'd call the cops and meet us there, and that this was a blatant breach of the restraining order. He encouraged me to remain cool but watchful. The drive back seemed to take forever, and I kept checking my mirrors, paranoid that my parents were following me. When I finally pulled into my building's garage, I sat in my car for a minute, just breathing, trying to get my poop together before facing Daniel and Rachel, who needed me to be strong right now. I found them already in my flat, Rachel clutching Lily as if she could leave, the poor kid looking confused and afraid, and Daniel pacing, running his hands through his hair repeatedly. I showed them the text. Rachel began crying, saying they had been monitoring her baby and that she would never forgive herself if something happened to Lily. Daniel wrapped his arms around them both, looking as determined as I'd ever seen him. Marcus arrived 20 minutes later with 2 police officers, who took our statements, looked at the text, and made some calls. They said they'd send a patrol car to the friend's place to investigate, that they'd try to track the phone number, and that they'd enhance patrols surrounding my building. They said all the right things, but I could tell they didn't realize how dangerous my parents could be, how unpredictable and desperate they were. After the cops had departed, we sat in my living room, trying to figure out what to do next. Rachel proposed staying at a hotel with different names, while Daniel recommended driving to his cousin's house a few states away. I sat there, becoming angry by the minute. This was just bullshit. We had done everything legally, including going through all of the legal processes and obtaining restraining orders, yet they were still harassing us and controlling our lives via fear. I stood up abruptly. "I'm done running," I responded, "and hiding. I'm done having others determine how I live my life. They have already stolen my childhood. I'm not giving them my adulthood either." Daniel looked at me like I was insane. "What are you going to do?" I honestly didn't know, but I knew we couldn't keep living this way. That night we took turns keeping watch while the others slept. I took the first shift, sitting by my living room window, all lights turned out, observing the street below. Around 2 a.m., I noticed an automobile I knew from my father's old Buick, which circled the block 3 times before stopping across the street. I took shots with my phone and then awoke Daniel. We watched as our father sat in his car, peering up at my building, not approaching or technically breaching the restraining order. He was simply letting us know he was there, watching and waiting. In the morning, I gave the images to Marcus, who said it was alarming but not legally a violation because my father stayed in his car, away from the building. He said he'd keep documenting everything and would speak with the investigator again. I hung up, frustrated, since the legal system had limitations. Restraining orders were merely pieces of paper and they couldn't stop someone who was determined to harm you. Rachel and Daniel planned to take Lily to a hotel for a few days that had interior corridors and adequate security. I helped them pack, hugged them goodbye, and promised to check in every few hours. After they went, I sat in my empty apartment, feeling strangely tranquil, as if I'd reached a decision point and couldn't continue living in this limbo. I called Melissa, told her everything, and asked what she felt I should do. She remained silent for a moment before asking me a question that struck me deeply. What do you really want from your parents? Not what I didn't want, or what I was afraid of, but what I consciously desired. I realized I'd never really considered it that way. After we hung up, I wrote a list. What I wanted. To live fearlessly. To maintain a relationship with my brother and his family. I want to quit feeling accountable. For my parents' conduct. To be free from the past. That list did not include reconciliation with my parents. There was no mention of forgiveness anywhere. Nobody seemed to understand why they did what they did. I simply wanted to be free from them. That afternoon, I did something crazier. I emailed my folks with a quick message. I know you're watching my building, and I know you're not going to stop, so let's talk one more time. Tomorrow, noon, at the coffee shop on 8th Street. Just me. No cops. No attorneys. After that, you'll leave us all alone forever. I pressed submit before I could change my mind. I did not tell Daniel, Rachel, Marcus, or Melissa. I needed to do this for myself. I wasn't stupid enough to believe that my parents would suddenly become rational, but I needed to confront them on my own terms. I needed to speak my piece. I needed to break the cycle once and for all. My father responded within minutes. We'll be there. No threats or guilt trips, just confirmation. I spent the rest of the day mentally preparing, thinking about what I wanted to say, what I needed them to hear, and what boundaries I needed to set. That night, I slept unusually soundly, as if making a decision had relieved some of my stress. The next morning, I dressed properly, not to impress them, but to feel powerful and confident. I took an Uber to the coffee shop, arriving 15 minutes early, and chose a table in the rear corner where I could see the door, but was not immediately visible from the outside. I ordered a coffee I didn't really desire and sat there waiting, remarkably calm. They came at midday, looking older and exhausted than they did in court. My mother recognized me first and nudged my father. They moved gently, as if they were approaching a dangerous animal that may bolt. They sat across from me without saying anything. We just stared at each other for a long time, these strangers who were my parents and had influenced me in ways they'd never comprehend. I talked first. I did not call this meeting to reconcile, give you money, or hear your excuses. I called it to make sure you understood one thing. It was over. You have lost. You have lost me not only in court. Daniel has been lost. You lost your grandchildren. We lost any possibility of including you in our lives. And if you won't accept it, if you keep chasing us, threatening us, and attempting to push your way back in, I will destroy you. My father began to interrupt. I raised my hand. I'm not finished. Then I brought out my phone and showed them copies of all their threatening texts, Lily's photo and emails. I have emailed copies to everyone in your life, including your family, church, neighbors, and employment. Everyone. Not yet. But I will. If you contact any of us again, visit our homes, or even mention our names to anyone we know. My mother started crying. We simply want our family back. We made mistakes, but we deserve another opportunity. We're becoming old, and we do not want to die alone. I gazed at her for a long time. You should have considered this before abandoning your 17-year-old daughter. Before lying to everyone about what you did. Before breaking into Daniel's home. Before you threaten your own grandchildren. That enraged my father. You are ungrateful. You have always been challenging. You have turned your brother against us. You owe us because we raised you. I just laughed, right in his face. Do you honestly believe you are entitled to gratitude? For doing the bare minimum as a parent? For 17 years before ditching me entirely? Do you believe I should be thanking you for your excellent parenting? He sat there, red-faced and mute, with no response to that question. My mother was still crying, but I felt nothing. No remorse, no pity. Just a cold realization that these people would never change, never accept responsibility, and never be the parents I deserved. I stood to leave. Here's your final warning. The next time you breach the restraining order, I won't simply phone the cops. I'll make sure everyone you know knows who you truly are. If you force my hand, I have the resources to make your life quite difficult. I do not want to do that, but I shall. I want to safeguard my family, my real family. Daniel, Rachel, Lily. The people I choose. As I went away, my mother yelled after me. Do you truly dislike us so much? I came to a stop and turned back. I do not detest you, I don't feel anything for you. You are suddenly strangers to me. And that is your loss, not mine. I left that coffee shop feeling lighter than I have in years. I called Daniel from the sidewalk and told him everything. He was outraged at first that I'd met them alone, then worried that they'd retaliate, but ultimately glad that someone had finally stood up to them directly. He said he wished he'd had the confidence to do so years ago. I returned to my flat, grabbed a suitcase, and decided to stay with Daniel and his family at their hotel for a few days to ensure their safety. When I arrived, Lily ran to hug me. "Auntie Ava!" She called for the first time, and I almost cried. Rachel hugged me as well, saying she was proud of me and wishing I might finally find peace. Daniel simply squeezed my shoulder, no words needed. We spent the next few days in a strange limbo, waiting for my parents to make their next move, constantly checking our phones and jumping at unexpected noises. But nothing happened. No calls, texts, emails, or sightings of their car. Only stillness. After a week, Daniel and Rachel decided to return home, change all of their locks, install security cameras, prepare to sell their property, and begin looking for a residence closer to my city. I returned to my apartment, went back to work, and resumed my normal life. 2 weeks passed, followed by a month. Nothing from my folks. Marcus checked in on a frequent basis, stating that the detective had confirmed their return to their home state, that the restraining orders were still in effect, and that we should remain alert while moving forward with our lives. Slowly, we did. Daniel acquired a new job in my city, Rachel enrolled Lily in preschool, and they purchased a home 20 minutes from my apartment. Every Sunday, we had supper together and began to create new traditions, memories, and a new type of family based on choice rather than obligation. I kept expecting to feel something about my parents' grief, perhaps remorse or rage, but overall, I felt relieved, as if I'd finally let go of a huge burden I'd been carrying since I was 17, and that I could now focus on the future rather than the past. 6 months after the coffee shop confrontation, I received a letter which was forwarded through Marcus, keeping my address confidential. From my mother. I almost threw it away unread. But curiosity won out. It was brief, only a few paragraphs long. There were no excuses or requests this time. Just an admittance that they had badly harmed me, that they had failed as parents, that they understood why I wanted nothing to do with them, that they were seeking counseling, and that they would follow the restraining orders. They hoped that someday I might be willing to hear a proper apology, but understood if that day never happened. I showed it to Daniel, and he received an identical letter. We spoke about it over dinner that night. Whether it was genuine, whether it altered anything, and whether we could ever trust them again. We didn't draw any conclusions. We simply vowed to take things one day at a time, to prioritize our healing, and to safeguard the family we were creating. I keep the letter in a desk drawer. Not because I am prepared to forgive. Not because I want to reconcile, but because it represents something significant. My parents finally accepted my right to create boundaries, to choose who I allow into my life, and to define family on my own terms. Last week, Lily celebrated her 4th birthday. Daniel and Rachel encouraged me to help plan it, and we had it at my place, with balloons everywhere, a cake purchased from a fancy bakery, and presents stacked on the coffee table. Lily goes around in a princess gown, smiling. Rachel is snapping pictures. Daniel is barbecuing on my balcony. Friends came by during the day, so much noise, so much joy. At one point, I moved into the kitchen for a moment alone, just looking through the doorway as Daniel swung Lily around in circles, Rachel laughing at something a friend said, and my apartment, which had previously been empty and quiet, filled with life and love. I recalled the message on my kitchen counter 12 years ago. You'll figure it out. And I did. Not the way they intended. But I had figured out what family should be, what love should be, and what I had always deserved. I am not suggesting that everything is perfect now. I still have trust difficulties, go to therapy every week, have occasional nightmares about being abandoned, and flinch when my doorbell sounds unexpectedly. But I, and we all, are mending. Creating something new from the broken bits of our history. Something stronger, something picked, something real. People sometimes question if I'll ever reconcile with my parents, if I'll ever allow them to see Lily, and if I'll ever forgive them for what they did. I don't have answers to such questions yet, perhaps someday, maybe never. But I know this. I am no longer defined by what they did to me. I am characterized by what I built afterward. By the person I decided to become. By the family I choose to make.